Welcome back to the Scale with Clarity podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Koeninger. Today's conversation is one I've been really excited to share because it puts words to something so many high-achieving people are experiencing, but don't always know how to name. My guest today is Elena Shirokaya. Elena spent years working in private equity where she helped allocate over $100 million across funds and investments. She's lived inside high-pressure environments where the expectations are high, the stakes are real, and the pace never really slows down. Today, she works with family offices and investment teams, and she also works closely with executive teams who are burned out, exhausted, or quietly running on empty. What I appreciate about Elena's work is that she doesn't approach burnout from a work harder or mindset shift lens. She looks at what's actually happening in the body, especially the nervous system, and how that shows up in leadership, decision-making, and everyday life. She created something called the Nervous System Capacity Index, which helps leaders understand how they're really functioning under pressure, not how they look on the outside, but what's going on internally. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you know I say this a lot. You take yourself with you wherever you go. So whether you're thinking about leaving corporate, starting your own thing, or already in a role that looks great on paper, if your nervous system never gets a chance to settle, clarity and confidence stay just out of reach. So in this episode, Elena shares her own experience with burnout, including how long it took her to recognize it. And we talk about why so many high performers normalize exhaustion as just part of the deal. We also talk about the difference between appearing calm and actually feeling grounded, and why that difference matters more than we realize at work, at home, and with the people who matter most. So if you've ever felt capable but depleted, successful but disconnected, this conversation is for you. Let's get into it. Elena, hi. Welcome to the
Hi.
podcast.
Hi, Brooke. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. For anyone who is listening, for Elena, when we're recording right now, it's about 7 p.m. on a Friday night. So before we started recording, I was like, thank you for making the time to come on the podcast. I know time zones are difficult, but you and I met on LinkedIn virtually, and your posts absolutely resonated with me. And I'm going to tell a quick story, and then I want you to introduce yourself, Elena, because I talk a lot about my path leaving corporate and, burnout. And I have a lot of people asking me, well, how long, does it take to replace your salary? What are the first steps you need to do? And I always say you're going to take yourself wherever you go. And it's going to take as long as you can re-regulate your nervous system. So when I saw you start talking about that, I was like, this is not talked about enough. And it is so, so important. So, and then of course we got on a call before this and I was like, everything you're saying, this needs to be told elsewhere. So I'm really excited to get into it. But before we do, can you just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing now?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Elena Shirokaya. I am a professional immigrant. I lived abroad in different countries since 20 years now. And being professional immigrant, I got used to integrate myself in different environments. And also, when you move countries so much, the first thing I wanted is to belong. And that's a bit what brought me when I had burnout. That's brought me to the current work. So I trained in psychology and psychotherapy, and I work in leadership psychology, helping executive teams enhance capacity and use internal regulation as the leadership skill, one of them, so that under pressure they can keep their calm, not perform calm, but actually be calm.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to there's so much in there because people don't, it's talked about a lot, but I don't think we really understand what that means and how that shows up. But what I love about your story too is not only who you're helping and how, but you faced it too. I mean, you were living this life, you were in the corporate grind, you were doing all the things, you were having kids. And so your story itself will resonate because you know exactly what it feels like. And so can we start there? Can we just go back to when you were living, I'll in quotes, that life, but corporate life, you're just in the grind, the hustle. Can you explain maybe what it looked like from externally, what others would have seen, and maybe how you were actually feeling internally back?
Yeah, yeah. And when I talk about it now, it's so different than how I lived it back in the day. Because for me personally, to actually realize, and we read that often, oh, you have to be honest with yourself first. So it took me 2 years to realize that I burned out, that actually it was not, diagnosed as a depression or burnout, but what I had was a burnout.
Can I just that's so, I love that you say that, because I think I used to tell myself, and I know I'm not alone in this, that, my brain was my most, especially being in strategy and finance and figuring out problems, that my brain was my most powerful weapon. And the weapon is the important thing, because it could turn itself on me. And I didn't realize how much it was telling me these stories like, well, you're just anxious in general. And so you're always going to feel this way. Or,
Yeah.
you just kind of, you're not as assertive. You just want to, maybe even it showed up as, I want to be like, I'm not as outgoing, or, what's the term? Like, I just needed time by myself, those type of things. And I'm like, okay, but now looking back again, I'm like, oh, that could have been signs. So anyways, I'm happy you named that. So back to you.
Yeah, but that's actually a V process, right? Because we normalize those things, like exactly like you said. I thought, I've been leading multi-million investment deals. I was great with my colleagues. My team was doing okay. I had good relationship. I had children, so I automatically concluded, that's the price. That's the cost of senior leadership, and everyone around me was confirming exactly that. So then by concluding number one, that's the price, I concluded number two, I'm doing something wrong, something is wrong with me. And that was perhaps the reason why it took a couple of years to actually say, okay, that was actually burnout. And now that I study as a researcher burnout, I realize it has just so many faces, and we don't know today, the burnout model itself has been updated a few years ago, and there is not enough yet studies, number one in general, number two for corporate, for leaders in finance, like we were back in corporate. There were not enough study for that category of population of about all the aspects of burnout. And thirdly, actually, there are not enough studies about the reasons. Maybe there are more reasons to burn out, as we'll talk today about nervous system. Maybe that's another reason for burnout, as like what your physiology is telling you, that has nothing to do with the way your discipline, or like your traditional like leadership skills, or even emotional intelligence. It might have to do with some experiences that stayed on your physiological level that were never completed. So on conscious level, you never knew about them, that they were not completed, but they do
Yeah.
also affect your engagement levels in the workplace, and they then consequently potentially affect burnout. I'm saying potentially because today, on academic level, those studies have not been done yet. So we can't then, as leaders, leading the teams, we can't conclude, anything about personal qualities, leadership qualities of our team members, because maybe there are other aspects that affect
Yeah.
their performance in the workplace.
And I want to pause there and like a couple things. So one is, what I'm hearing is, we could be in an environment in our leadership capacity or whatever our job may be, and we are feeling the physical signs of just continued stress. And oftentimes our brain might go to the current scenario. Like, I just got to get through this meeting, this big presentation I have, or this next deal that I'm trying to close. But what we often minimize is subconsciously, things could have happened throughout our lives that our body has learned a different way to address. And until we figure out how to process stress better, or how to notice it earlier, and the things that for us uniquely work to maybe more regulate, it's going to continue to show up regardless of the situation, how big or small it is.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
said right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yes. I
absolutely.
love that.
And
And
I know I didn't really answer
yeah,
your question in the beginning,
no,
like how it showed up for me, and like what I felt. I can come and tell that story. It was just important to know in the broader context of my perception of it today as someone working professionally with leaders experiencing exhaustion, burnout, and researching the topic at the same time is very different than perception of Elena 3 years ago,
Yeah,
when it all happened.
well, I think we can always have a little bit more compassion for others than we give to ourselves. So that's one thing. I think when you're going through it, it's hard to just stop and be like, of course I'm feeling this way until you're past it and looking back. I mean, we saw that, at least I've seen that a ton with people talking about their time in COVID as one example, how stressful, the kids were at home and there was people that were getting sick and you just kind of did it. And then you look back and you're like, that was really hard. And I didn't give myself enough credit for what I was doing. And similarly in the workplace. So I think that absolutely is important. But I think the second thing, and I want to go back to kind of how you were feeling, because I think there's two different things, and tell me I'm wrong, is there's what our brain is telling us. Maybe you were talking about being in this job and again, closing the deals and running a big group and having kids. And I think oftentimes our brains can say one thing and like be like, oh, this is awesome, exciting. And you're riding this dopamine hit or whatever it may be, but you're ignoring maybe what's happening in your body. And so I think so I want to pause there and go back to your story, but that's what I'm pulling from that
Yeah,
too, is like, it's hard.
yeah,
You've got to tap into the whole of you. So
yeah, yeah. So for me, I'm now recovering people pleaser. And as immigrant, I wanted to belong. Like I learned French when I moved to Belgium before I spoke proper English. And, this idea of belonging and on terms of self-image subconsciously meant the sensation of never being enough. So I have to do more, more every day. And
perfectionist too, and
you
people
know,
pleasing.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it happens to so many women I'm talking. So, and that might be going on for years. But when you get young kids, only a job is to survive. And then to survive, they sense the carers, the mothers to start with, fathers, state of being. So the kids, they notice that something is wrong when, parent system is activated. And so, and then it's like a vicious circle that you get more and more, issues. I suffered from migraines since I was like, since my teenage times, and it was like going on, and I would work well whole week, and then the weekend I would lie down the whole weekend with migraines. And I learned now that those are, those kind of stubborn pains are nervous system red flags to say, hey, we've got to take rest. And
Yeah.
so the whole story came when like I had third baby, and we wanted to take it easy with my husband. We moved from London to Spain, and I was supposed to be perfect. I'm taking break between jobs. I left a well-paid job. I had, some savings made up. So I was supposed to be happier, enjoying my kids and like figuring out what's next. And I just couldn't stop. I couldn't rest. I would pack my day with activities, endless activities, where I was like, I felt I had to, I just couldn't stop and rest. I felt to, like if I was reporting still to someone, to my board and investment committee, like what Elena is doing on her free time.
Yes. Yes. And it's this that absolutely resonates. I mean, that's what I've done and so many people I talk to. And it for me, it was like, it was almost this mirror moment of like, I realized it was me feeling like I, well, one, I had to prove something, but two, like, it meant something about me and my identity and my capabilities if I stopped. Like I wouldn't be able to like bring it back on, or I was like giving up, or I just couldn't handle it if I took like a lazy quote down day. Now, again, reframing it and looking back, I'm like, that's so crazy. But that sounds like that's exactly where you were too
Yeah,
in that moment.
yeah. And that's what happens to so many high achievers, that that's how Peter Levine describes in the different, there are three modes of nervous system. Mode number one, the social interaction mode, when nervous system feels safe. Mode number two is when like we're constantly on, like we cannot stop, we cannot pause, like the rest doesn't work for us. We wake up already feeling like a bit drained or anxious. That's mode number two. mode number 3 is like when our nervous system pulls hard brake. But then what I've noticed with high achievers, for many people, they just feel numb, like they can't feel the feels, they don't really feel the feelings and stuff. But in the same time, they can easily like maneuver for many, many years between mode number 2 and 3. So like Monday morning, mode on, switch on, like, and you are active. Friday, 7 p.m., you're like switch off and you don't feel anything. Like your kids are dragging you, daddy, mommy, let's go play, and you're like, whatever, daddy is
Yeah.
taking rest, mommy is taking rest, scrolling on the phone because you want to feel at least something.
So mode number 2, as you're saying that, is it's so interesting because that I feel like can be mistaken for, like, especially if you're a type A or kind of, people pleaser, go getter, like what you've seen in your job is like, has shown you the way that you've succeeded. Your brain might switch mode 2 to tell yourself that you're totally on, you're ready for the day, you're like, your brain is firing on all cylinders. But what I'm hearing from you is actually is a sign that like it can't shut down. It's like, so I've got to imagine, is that hard, like telling which side, like recognize it as mode 2 versus I'm ready before a meeting and I feel like I'm ready and I've prepared and I'm ready to go get it. There's a slight
Yeah,
differentiation, I think, but we can mix it up.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's a bit the work I had to do. So it was when I started working with individuals first, it was not clear for people, like, so like it's like very abstract. So I went down to research and I've seen what different researchers are saying, and I created the index that has 4 categories. For individual, it's like tilted towards corporate, top management, somebody with a team or budget responsibility. To distinguish actually on those 4 areas, and pretty simple questions, you do it in 5 minutes, like, am I actually switched on? Like, what's my capacity level? Like, how am I doing? Because those are exactly the questions to yourself. Like, many high achievers, Monday morning you put a mask on, like together with your suit, and you go to the office like you're switched on. But what happens when you are honest with yourself for a moment is that you actually perform emotions, you perform being switched on, you perform your 250K corporate salary, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to you being you, who embodied, who is the person that is genuinely leading the team and creating the impact they are set out to create. That's this simple questionnaire just make those intangible things like very tangible, as a
It's
starting
so
point.
I have so much, I guess, grace or so, like for that woman that I was hearing this too. I'm like, I did think, because you kind of have to, like you said, you put on your suit, you put on your identity, you sort of fake it till you make it, is what we've always been told, but to your point, that can flip. And even leaving, even when there was nobody expecting anything but myself of what I wanted to build, a lot of entrepreneurs, even that have left, getting into alignment and doing something that they enjoy and the ease that can come with that, because to your point, it's driven by just their own genuine excitement and not kind of this push of like, oh, I'm going to, dominate this meeting or how I'm going to show up. It feels, because it doesn't have that underlying like angst, it can kind of feel like it's too easy and you're not working for it. But what you're saying is that's actually a sign of like regulation and in alignment with what you should be doing versus how you've kind of been feeling your whole life and gotten used to what has driven you a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why when we connected, and the first thing I told you, Brooke, it's sad that we haven't met 2 years before, because when I left corporate, I felt so lonely. I was like, okay, the only thing I knew, I had no idea what nervous system was. I never
Nope.
heard that term before.
I was like, oh,
So
that's a woo term that nobody, like
yeah,
we don't need to worry about that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly that. And then like all these kind of concepts about mindset, embody the person who you are, work with your subconscious, program your subconscious so it helps you achieve great things, like all those concepts. And now I talk to people that build million worth multi-million businesses, and they say exactly that thing. Gosh, Elena, to build a business, you have to embody the person that built 7, 8, 9 figure business on your
Yep.
subconscious level.
Yep.
And then I go back and think about it, and I say, okay, but then in order to embody that on subconscious level, you first have to clean up a bit the physiological level. But because if we look at three systems, your subconscious, your physiology, and your mind, in simple terms, whatever kind of traumatic or sad experience, frustrating experience, let's call them triggers, that you've experienced over lifetime, they're stored on physical level. And nervous system, shows red flags like I could not relax, I feel unsafe, and then because XYZ. So actually subconscious reading that. So whatever you want to program in your mind until you complete the unresolved situations that are stored still on physical level. So nervous system can't relax. Your subconscious can't relax neither, because for subconscious it's a direct signal we are not safe. And we are not safe means like how can you embody new identity of a person that creates a 7-figure plus business if we haven't cleaned up the baggage that we had? And
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but it doesn't matter. All of us have goals. All of us want to either, if you're in a W-2 traditional, corporate job and you want to get to that next leadership level, or you're building a business or thinking about leaving. I think we can often tell ourselves when you get to that next level, then you'll be, you'll kind of embody that identity. And certainly there's a little bit of like the mind over the body, just doing it. But what you're saying, and it so resonates, is we think that we just need to, get that promotion and then we'll feel the confidence or whatever it may be. But you will respond similarly until you figure out how to rewire that, how to notice exactly how you're feeling. You will continue to kind of stop yourself or feel that anxiety or burnout in wherever you are. And it's so interesting. A lot of people, and I know you work with a lot of leaders in the corporate environment or startups, as you said too, but even for my audience that leaves corporate, we think, oh, that'll be the relaxing. Then my body, have flexibility and I'll just have all of this happiness. And 9 times out of 10, people I talk about too, and you and I have lived this, you're responding in the same way. So exactly like you said, physiologically, until we kind of figure out these are our triggers and this is how I'm naturally responding and this is how I kind of want to respond differently, nothing's going to change. It doesn't matter if your situation
yeah,
is changing, you're still going to
yeah,
respond the same way.
you can still be in exactly same burnout levels, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
So not only noticing if our situation needs to change, because certainly that can trigger you more often and more, you can be in a misaligned environment. You can be doing work that is not actually filling you up. But also, besides the environment, is yourself. You're bringing yourself into whatever environment you are. So even if you've found the exact right thing in the alignment, and I use myself too, just getting new clients and having to put myself out there in like sales, going from a job to having to bring my own new clients in, it brought up stuff like that too, that, oh my gosh, I'm still people pleasing. I'm still over delivering. I still don't have those boundaries and I'm still having this high anxiety. And that can even sometimes double down, I feel like, because you've made the change and now you're like, I'm still responding in the same way. And it's so frustrating on yourself until you say, oh, there's this whole other level of thing that I need to work through as well. So back to your story. So you had moved, you had realized that you couldn't relax. What were some of the things, what did you start doing then to say, okay, now I'm aware of this. How can I start changing this? Or what do I even need to do?
Yeah, so actually, as a due diligence person, I tried cognitive behavior therapy, embodiment practices, and that's actually, different somatic practices like dynamic meditations, dancing, whatever, we do yoga, whatever we do with
Yeah.
the body. That helps to start connecting with the system, because If someone listens now and says, okay, I just need to check out my nervous system, the whole idea of that work is that we forget how to feel. So whatever modality you choose, the process will be to learn how to feel sensations, how to notice different internal states of your body, different emotions and thoughts during those different internal states, and then how to develop self-trust throughout the different moments. So it's
Can
not
I
so
go
much,
ahead?
this modality or that modality, go for this. That's number one. Number two is also not so much like before in talk therapy, the issue was that you would be like some, people going through difficult times would be dependent on therapists. But the whole idea of nervous system work is that actually you learn about how to feel your different states, and then once you learn to feel them, you develop relationship with them. So it doesn't really matter what modality you use, as long as you know where you are on that journey by experiencing your life on daily basis through your different dimensions of your life.
Elena, so I've said this, and this has been my own awakening too, is so you talked a little bit about zone 3 nervous system, where now you've kind of just numbed. And I think for me, absolutely. I've said this before in my story. It was like, we come home, my husband asked about how was your day? I'd be like, it was fine. It was fine. And so it never felt like it's horrible. It's not horrible. But now looking back, I realized I had reached that zone 3 and I was very short to my children. So I knew like there was a very short fuse, but I never was really excited. I was never really high or low. I kind of normalized this. So now you articulating that to me, I'm like, yep, exactly where I was. But exactly what you're saying now, it makes so much sense, because then when I started doing the work and you start feeling again, I actually thought I was moving backwards, because I started feeling then the dips or the highs or low. Like you start kind of allowing that in. I don't know if that's common, but what you're saying too. And so I think I just want to put that out there. Like, at least that was true for me, is that progress actually felt like I was going backwards, but I was learning to feel again, and then trusting that when I felt that anger or frustration or really excitement, like it could be high or low, that my body, oh, that's a normal feeling. I'm used to that now again, and it'll pass in a minute, or whatever they say,
Yeah.
7 seconds, however, 15 seconds for an emotion pass,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Was that true
Absolutely.
for you too, as you
Yeah.
started letting these feelings in?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's normal process. Like we were frozen. Um, Actually, since Levine in somatic experiencing focused on serious traumas, there is a place to write a new book about like what happens, like what you and I experienced, what happens in leadership. But the closest descriptive I find is that like low burning freeze state on
Yeah.
which you can live for actually many, many years. And sometimes I'm wondering why, like when people used to retire, they would like some people would die in a short period of time after retirement, because then if you live on a frozen state for 10, 15 years, and I talked to friends who told me, let's talk in 5 years. I don't feel much, but let's talk in 5 years. So that means that in 5 years, they retire, like when system feels a little bit of space, unless they would keep numbing the feelings for like a while more, right? All this has to still come up first, being processed, left in peace,
Yep.
and then kind of you'll have more space, more capacity for what's next.
That I've never correlated the two, but you're absolutely right. Like if you have lived in this frozen state and you get to retirement and you haven't figured out how to kind of be present and centered in who you truly are and process and regulate nervous system, it all comes flooding. And it's a lifetime of that not only is that a big change, but you have lived your life thinking that you were processing for so long. And then it's almost like your brain can tell you, this is bad, retirement is bad, or this, like, because I'm all of these feelings. Like, and so it can the thing you were waiting your whole life for is not actually bringing the feeling because now you're processing it. So for people who are in their jobs, and you alluded to this already, so a little bit of like, it's unique to everyone. But for me, it was really hard. My path was leaving and then processing all this. And I know if you're in a job and you're like, yeah, I'm kind of like in that zone 2 a lot. I'm feeling the zone 3. So I'm now aware. Like, for me, it was hard to carve out the time and change in the environment that was causing it for me. Like, like I was having the meetings, I couldn't create the boundaries. Like, what are some like little micro things that you think that can at least get somebody started? And I will admit and acknowledge that I think a big part of it is just awareness and being like, oh, okay, now I know, and I know these feelings are gonna come. But like, what are some small micro things that people can start doing to say, okay, let me change this?
Yeah, it's like the question that I don't like because they don't exist. Because I wish I could just give you, like standard
Yeah,
LinkedIn posts where you have 10 items to watch for. So once you use nervous system capacity index or whatever measure to figure out what are the blocks you need to pay attention to, ideally is to carve out the time and work with some of those things
yeah,
through, nowadays you have many nervous system practitioners. I actually offer the corporate programs for exactly that
yeah,
reason. Because it's so much cost on corporate. Like if I had the business with that many employees, there are estimates actually worldwide 30% of people are happy with their lives and their jobs. So that means daily I'm bleeding money, because there is a term called presenteeism when a person is at work but mentally depleted. So the value they bring to your business, and you pay them 250K a year, is you can cut it by a certain percentage. So my idea is to bring that kind of work to the
yeah,
that instead of executive retreats, we would have that thing when a person would get their initial index, have a couple of individual sessions to dig in to understand themselves, and then there would be a
yeah,
team workshop, because that index gives a blame-free language. So it like generalizes the terms, but the work is there to connect and freely talk about those things without the nervous system language helps not to go into any personal
yeah,
level,
yeah,
right? So since it's so hard to carve out time, I expect uh, shareholders, business owners to invest for their teams instead of like we would go to vineyards in south of France. But I wish instead I would do something like this, because it would have saved, it would have made me much more efficient at work, with my deals, with my family, and like many many more women who have young children at senior levels. There are statistics they're leaving big time to start their things. And companies are bleeding this wealth of knowledge,
yeah,
diversity. So if they had this kind of retreat, or if there would be more providers of this kind of services, if it was normalized, there are already statistics, how
yeah.
well-being, mental activities affect positively. It's like you have $5, you gain $5 on $1 of investment, you know.
I mean, absolutely. And it's funny you say that you hate that question because I get the same in my line of work and just with a lot of clients. It's like, what are the first 3 things I need to do to, start my business, leave my job and start my business or be more profitable? And I say the same thing because I'm like, it starts with figuring out who you are and what you want, which is the hardest thing for all of us because we're not used to kind of starting from that. We're used to delivering what others need. And so it's a similar thing. And it's not a quick, easy. It's going to take it as long as it's going to take you. So that absolutely resonates. And you talking about like my immediate thought is, yeah, leaders reach burnout. And you said, I think that the highest percentage is women in their 40s and 50s that are actively leaving because they've had kids. They're usually the caretakers of their parents. They're in burnout. They're trying to do all these things. And they're like, whether it's I'm opting out or they're just, I'm going to create my own business that is flexible, which raise my hand. I'm for those women and all of them. But besides the burnout and leaving, there is, to your point, and I alluded to this before we started recording, but you've posted about this too. You talked about presenteeism, which we're seeing, but also this lack of connection. Because when you are, and we see it when as parents, with our kids, and we're shorter with them when we're, just trying to get things done, that absolutely shows up in the workforce too. And so it is, as a business owner or corporate, it is absolutely costing you money. And so you're absolutely right. Like the thing that I used to do in a lot of businesses, I think still do, to improve corporate cultures, they'll have like, a day with your team or team outings, or even for, to go do these trainings for the day. But what is absolutely the biggest change is meeting the individuals where they are, is like you're saying your program does, and says, this is where you are on this scale. Let's work with you and your needs and kind of your unique body type, and figure out how to process this, with the underlying thing being, we're going to really focus on your nervous system to allow greater, authority, more leadership responsibilities and stuff. But you're never going to be able to get to that unless you work through what's underlying it.
Mm. Yeah.
So, you mentioned this already. So I love all that. But how do people, if they want to work with you, so you're coming into corporate groups or whatever, what does that look like? Is it monthly? Do you have a set program? And how do they find you and reach out to you if they're like, yep, feeling exactly this way?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I post twice a week, and that's where I share really what's in the cooking, what's on my mind, some statistics about research, state of research on burnout. And this year I'm launching the team restoration program.
I love that.
And most efficient is the combination of individual and teamwork, where teams would learn this language of self-compassion and understanding. And bottom line of all that, it will help teams build trust on experiential level. Because I used to have allergy on like leadership trainings because it felt like to me very much top down on the mind level. While I see in the future leadership trainings will be more experiential, meaning that the trainers would create set of exercises that would take the person where they are in point A with their own pace, would allow them to move to point B, which is creating a common sense. I learned that Einstein was talking already about unified consciousness. This
I
is
know.
scientifically, that's not
Yeah.
woo stuff. It's like there are
No.
scientific experiments about the neuroscience and the quantum physics level that could prove in the future why healing circles work. Because when we are in a group and we listen to some experiences of other people from the place of I speak for my experiences as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to I am the experience. So when we hear that, something switches at our state level, mind level, subconscious level of how we relate to that person. So that's the idea of these kind of workshops, because in a matter of few hours, something would switch, which you could measure in the future by doing the index again, by like maybe I don't need to perform my emotions so much because I've experienced together with the other few members of my team of what it means to have a shared experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many layers to that too. We already talked about like, I can have empathy for others, but not myself. So if you can separate your own experience into a separate thing, it kind of allows you to feel it for yourself, even though it's separate from you. And exactly like you said, there's this unified consciousness, which I didn't know Einstein talked about, but he's brilliant. So that doesn't surprise me. is, I mean, at a very, very, very basic level, is when you're around someone else who has a higher energy, which means they're happy and excited. It is very contagious. And so you can talk about that on a scientific level as well, which they're starting to do more and more studies around. But to your point, is when somebody is regulated and calm and steady, we've all been around those people that you're like, it just is calming to yourself too. You're like, they know. And so besides just, we kind of intuitively, our subconscious are like, oh, of course, that makes sense. But it does. It is. So when you can make a team kind of have that together, both together, but as separate individuals coming together, the unlock, I can imagine, is greater than the individual
Yeah.
parts, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term. So
Yeah.
I love that, Elena. I will put your LinkedIn into the show notes, and I'll include your website too if anyone wants to get in touch with you, both from an individual standpoint or for their company as well. Because I said at the beginning, I said at the middle, I'll say it again too, is this is such a important and critical unlock for whatever you're trying to, whether you're moving out of corporate and into your own business, whether you're in a business and trying to grow your business as a bigger leader, or whether you're in corporate and trying to get hired. Like, it is critical for everyone to kind of look internally and assess like where you are. So I also love that you have that assessment that just even starts you on like, hey, it sounds like this might be me, but I think I need to kind of answer these
Yeah.
questions too. So
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all that. And thank you for coming on here and just sharing your
Yeah.
wealth of
I
knowledge.
loved it. It flew by so fast. Every
Told
time
you.
I speak with you, I was like, oh my God. First of all, everyone needs people like Brooke. I mean,
Oh,
if
Elena.
you decide to start your stuff, and even if not, it feels like when you share same experiences, we can share, we can openly talk about that stuff, normalize it, and it would positively affect families, children, because that's it for me, because I know behind corporate leaders you have X1, X2, X3 of children looking up to them,
Yeah. Yeah. And you
and
want them to.
receiving all that nervous system. Yeah.
It's so true. So it's not just the work for yourself, it's the work for others. And that's what I said too, is like, I never knew how dysregulated or kind of just how much work I wanted to do on myself until I saw it starting to be reflected in my children. And I, correct them for being short with their siblings. And I'm like, then it was like a mirror held up. I'm like, I'm doing like, it wasn't until they came along that not just because I wanted to be better for them, but I kind of saw this mirror of them acting how I was. And I was like, I can't say one thing and do the other. So thank you. Thank you for those nice words. It's like a free advertisement for me. I will take it, but I appreciate it. And you're right. Like, this just flies by. So we'll probably have to, I know we'll talk again and dig deeper into this, but yeah, I'll put all this information in the show notes. So thank you again.
All right. Sure.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scale with Clarity. If it sparks something for you and you're wondering what your next step might look like outside of corporate, I created a free tool called the Clarity Compass. It's designed to help you uncover your strengths and start mapping what an aligned business could look like. You can download it at the link in the show notes. And if you'd like more personalized support, I also offer one-on-one coaching to help you design and build a solopreneur path that fits your life. And until next time, thanks so much for listening. Be sure to tune back in for more stories and conversations that I hope inspire and guide you on your own journey.